As they always say here, aloha. Thank you all for coming. I know it's the last day, it's early in the morning. I don't like to waste a lot of time, so let's just get started. First with maybe a 1-minute intro from everybody on you and your company. So Vince, I'll start with you.
Okay, good morning everybody. Vincent English, I'm CEO of Megaport. We're a software-defined networking technology business, globally over 21 countries today, predominantly on interconnection and cloud provisioning. We're connected to all the top cloud providers over across 156 cloud on-ramps. So our business is about growing connectivity and the future of networking, and this panel is pretty much right down our alley.
I'm Phil Napoli. I'm a faculty member in the Sanford School of Public Policy at Duke University. And as I've traveled since joining Duke, I've come to realize that everybody hates Duke. I can't tell how many people I've met here say, oh, Duke. But I'm getting used to it. But at the Sanford School, I'm affiliated with a center called the DeWitt Wallace Center for Media and Democracy, and we do research on various aspects of media and communications, regulation, and policy issues.
Boy, this is the year or the time to be involved in media and democracy. So it was a smart pick. Manoj?
Hi, I'm Manoj. I'm the Managing Director for GPX India. GPX India is a carrier-neutral data center service provider in India. We have also operations in Cairo. Today we run a data center, in fact, a couple of data centers. We recently inaugurated a second data center. Our first data center is the Carrier Hotel. It has all the carriers, 12 carriers, 130 plus ISPs, 4 internet exchanges, and all the OTTs and the CDN players, and it has become a hub for exchange of content and enable major reduction in costs for the ISPs and for the internet in India to grow. It has been an interesting time in India, and I would love to share some of the things during the course of the discussion.
Dwan?
Dwan Young, I do not hate Duke. I don't know where that came
Thank
from.
you.
Okay. I'm with Verizon, specifically Verizon Partner Solutions. Our main goal is to work with our partners across the globe to create solutions that grow both the top line revenue of our partners and ourselves. I specifically support our applications, platforms, and our voice solutions.
Great. So we're going to talk a little bit about the future of networking, which is a very complicated topic. But I'm going to open it up for questions whenever I run out of questions myself. So the first question I'm going to start with, and the first person I'll start with, Vince, is you, because you're sort of core infrastructure, and then I'll go over to Dwan, also on kind of the physical terrestrial interconnection and landline growth. So the first short-term question would be, what are you seeing in terms of trends and surprises in the industry?
I suppose I'd start by saying that I think networking has been forgotten about for the past 20 years. We were used to virtualizing compute and cloud and applications, and that's taken over, but network is still as traditional as it was 10 and 15 years ago. At the start of our business, we've been very much focused on using software API integration to actually making the usability and the functionality of networking a lot more easier, and abstracting the complexity out of networking for end users or IT users or business users, and enabling deeper connections in a seamless way, and abstracting that away from it. So I think that's a core part of development, with API and software development being used to further increase connectivity. And it's not just necessarily about dark fiber or any other form of connectivity. It's actually how it all connects together.
So if I can challenge you and or ask you where we stand on that, it's probably been for 30 years that we've been talking about intelligent networks and bandwidth on demand and optimized routing and SDN and NFV, obviously not for 30 years, but for the last few years anyway. And now with 5G network slicing going to the core, and kind of the general idea is all this great, amazing stuff is going to happen, and either under user control or under autonomous optimization, everything will magically happen. Is that still hype, or you feel like it's now, we're entering the era for real?
Well, we're doing it every day. That's our business, right? So we're connected into over 550 POPs We're connected to 140 odd cloud on-ramps across the globe. And what we're actually doing is enabling customers by simply getting a cross-connect in a data center to be able to virtually connect anywhere across the countries and across the network in literally a minute. And by that I mean you can actually log into your AWS account and actually start using compute, or you can actually log into another component on a network and start actually doing business. So there's two parts to it. One is actually the network itself, so the physical network and building it out and connecting it together, but optimizing that with the software layer, and that which is effectively the SDN component. And then that allows us to abstract all that complexity, so when a customer wants to connect to something, they can actually do it, and it's all self-provisioned within 60 seconds. So we've been doing that for the last 4 years and expanding our business and increasing the ecosystem now, not just cloud providers, but software and application providers, SD-WAN capability, so that customers have a choice of not just services they want, they can get it all through one single pane of glass, one portal, and provision services pretty much within minutes. And that enablement means that the business user can just get on doing the day job, and I don't need to be a black belt in networking to figure out how to cobble all this together.
Right, that's the holy grail. So Dewan, I've heard that Verizon is a major network provider as well. So you probably have some interesting insights to share. What are you seeing? I know you've been meeting with customers here, both in terms of Verizon's build out, but also what your customers and partners are asking you to do.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting time. I would build off of Vinny's sentiments that I think at the core of what we're doing, both for ourselves within Verizon and the partners that we support, is digital transformation. So you look at the customers from a digital transformation perspective, what are they trying to accomplish with their business? How are they changing the experiences that their customers have with them? And how do they use the technologies that Vinny mentioned and others that we're all talking about in order to change and disrupt their own businesses in a real and meaningful way? So as a service provider, we're providing solutions that help with digital transformation, help to bring forward things that, whether it's at the content side, whether it's at the network side, bringing more virtualization, automation, utilizing APIs, using cloud in a new and unique way, bringing cloud to the edge for low latency solutions. I think at the core of all of those technology trends that Joe, you mentioned may be hype at some point, but really looking at the customer and how you disrupt their business in a meaningful way and use technology in order to expand and improve what they do. That's really the biggest trend that we see. How do we make the experiences and the business of our customers better by utilizing the technologies that we have?
So Verizon also has a 5G initiative underway, I've heard. And I know that's not necessarily your core area.
Absolutely.
But maybe if you could speak a little bit to 5G in the US for 30 seconds or a minute, whatever, and then we can go to Manoj and find out more about what 5G in India is looking like. That would be really fascinating.
Sure, so from a 5G perspective, Verizon, thank you Joe, is in 31 markets in the United States as of today, and expanding our 5G footprint on a daily basis. So the big thing for us where we see 5G as transformative is the ability to provide extreme levels of bandwidth, sensor densification, latency, all of those great things that you hear about 5G will come to bear, but at the core of that is really the applications that ride on the network. So having this large highway and this increased bandwidth and connectivity from a 5G perspective, we're really dependent on the developer community, the application provider community to kind of go back to that transformative nature of what applications bring to the table. So we're marrying those two with the what we believe is the world's greatest 5G network and the applications that ride on that network. We think that really some exciting things are to come in the future.
So wow, 5G sounds really good. Hey, Manoj, I wonder if it's kind of the same story in India. No, we did not rehearse this question.
Yeah, so let me take 2 steps back and give you some background on what's happening in India, and then see how 5G is important and how it's going to plan out. So well, in India today we have around 1.2 billion mobile subscribers. We have around 650 internet subscribers, around 450 million smartphone users, and there are 270 million Facebook users, highest in the world. There are over 400 million WhatsApp users. It has gone from 200 million just 2 years back to 400 million in a matter of 2 years. Today, India is a country which has 10 GB download per smartphone per month. That's the highest in any other country. In the first 6 months of 2019, we had around 5.1 billion downloads of apps from whether it's Apple Store or Google or somewhere else, much higher than 60% more than the nearest one, which is US. With this background, and the reason why all this is happening is today an Indian subscriber at the cost of just $3 a month, he gets unlimited voice calls, unlimited SMSs, and he gets 1 GB of download free every day. What that means is the taxi driver or the maid or anybody else, they have a smartphone, and whenever they have free time or they create free time for themselves, and they are consuming all these content. So that's a huge, huge consumption of content which now is getting created in India, a lot of Chinese content coming in apart from the usual English content. Just 3 or 4 years back, 80% of the content that was consumed in India was in English. Now 70% of the content being consumed in India is being created in India. That's the big change that is happening, and it's really driving consumptions and making some waves. The challenge is that while we have 4G deployed and available to nearly 90% of the population across the country, the average speed that one gets, though people say that it's 10 meg, but generally even in town cities like mine in Mumbai, there are times when you don't get anything more than 2 or 3 Mbps. So that's where we are in 4G. So the challenge is that if consumption has to be enhanced, do we need to improve on 4G or do we need to go on 5G? So while we are deploying 5G in other countries, if you start deploying it in a country like India where there are around 700,000 base stations, you need to upgrade 700,000 base stations, and it's an estimation that for 5G you'll need 3 times more base stations than in 4G. So you're talking of 210,000 base stations, 2.1 million base stations in India for 5G to provide the type of services that a 5G envisages. I would believe that it would do great service for Indian telecom service providers who are laden with some debt of around $37 billion. The telecom industry in India is laden with $37 billion, and their annualized revenue is around $27 billion. So it would be more, as a user, I would see that it's better if the focus in the next 2-3 years is to improve the 4G performance, raise the average bandwidth available to every user at every time, at every place. That's very critical. Every user, every time, every place to 10 Mbps, I would believe the users would be more happy with 4G than on 5G.
So it's interesting to look at the differences in the world, and I know those of you that have been here in the center stage session, there's been a lot of discussion around 5G. Where is it most applicable, shall we say, and also what's the time frame? It's also interesting to see the different regional variations where you have companies like Verizon committed to 5G ultra-wideband and mmWave spectrum primarily. You've got India, where Manoj is saying that 4G might be a better solution than 5G. And then you've got China, where due to various balances of government direction and the nature of demographics and city sizes and layouts, you've got more of a mid-band solution, at least in the near term, going to mmWave. But in any event, it's pretty clear that wherever you are, wireless networks, IoT, increasingly sophisticated users, et cetera, are driving increased bandwidth and increased data flows. And the question, I guess, that comes up on all of that would be, Phil, what are the implications of more data, more people, more devices from a public policy and user privacy perspective?
Sure, yeah, and I'll talk a little bit sort of for those of us who do policy research in this space, what kind of questions we're looking at. I mean, one of the things that obviously in the US we're grappling with is, sort of what sort of property status should be assigned to these various categories of user data. That's obviously something that's, fairly unresolved, and there's a number of pieces of legislation floating through. Most of them dealing a lot with sort of social media users' data and digital platform user data. But the other thing that's interesting too is what we're learning about sort of as mobile devices diffuse and as the user bases grow, and the nature of how people's usage of mobile devices, for example, versus PCs, and the nature of how digital divide issues are being addressed, right? That that's a concern that we still have in the policy space about the actual different layers of what we mean when we talk about something like the digital divide. It's not just that you put a mobile device in somebody's hand, but do they have the skill sets and the abilities to do with it that's a more sophisticated user who perhaps migrated from a PC or a laptop to a mobile device has. We know, for example, right, we're using the term consumption a lot, and the reality is beyond sort of social media posts, the more time people spend on a mobile device is more time spent consuming versus creating, for example. It tends to be still more simplistic, searches are less sophisticated, when they're used on a mobile device versus a laptop, and so bigger picture issues about sort of how citizens and users engage with these technologies are things we're thinking about, and how those can inform like whether it's digital divide policy or privacy policy, things of that sort.
Got it. So I'm going to ask if there's any questions before I ask my next killer question. Anyone in the audience have a burning question to ask? If so, like wave your hand wildly. Tim Horan over here, if we can get a mic on him. Or not, okay.
For Mr. English, how is virtualizing networks? What do we need to do to change the underlying physical infrastructure of the networks to take advantage of virtualizing networks?
So the question is, given today's physically oriented infrastructure, what's the impact of virtualization and what are the challenges?
It's a good question, because it actually just ties back into what we just finished off here. One of the biggest issues that we're facing in networking is legacy, both hardware and infrastructure. And the reason I say that is that even taking like cloud adoption and the use of compute and moving from private to public and public to private is because of infrastructure. And there's no uniform way of connecting everything together. Now, certainly I'm a great believer in the use of dark fiber and the expansion of dark fiber that's taken part. And if you think about the amount of investment that's gone into dark fiber infrastructure over the last, call it even 5 years, never mind 10, that's really important for communications in general, right? In metros and in cities all around the world, it increased speed. It allows for a lot more higher consumption of data. It allows us for more applications to use. We have to find ways, or it has to come together, where the use of technology like 5G, like dark fiber, like traditional telecoms has to be able to communicate together. And that has to be done with software, right? Because the underlying hardware that's needed to move data across networks has changed a lot. So even some of the hardware that we're talking about today, it's getting smaller in size, high port density, lower electricity or usage consumption, so that we can drive way more data across it, and the ability to move data across the network. So the biggest challenge is literally investment in that networking to allow that connectivity to happen. And on the 5G side of things, you're right about the different countries and the different abilities about how that needs to roll out, but it's a massive investment, and the question always comes back to what's the return on the investment versus the long-term need to have the infrastructure and investing now, and governments and regulatory environments where they're saying, look, we actually need to have this technology and we need to help those companies to roll out the infrastructure, or you'll get left behind in the future going forward. And it's how that technology then is used and to allow it to be open and integrated is really where the way forward is going to be.
Anyone else have any comments to add to that?
Yeah, I would concur. It does come down to investment. When you talk about everything from changeover from legacy technology to VNF and SDN-based solutions, we've reached a point where most of the network is virtualized, but you still have legacy components in the network, so that there's a cost component, there's a capital component associated with that. But then when you talk about the 5G deployment, fiber densification is a key component to expanding that bandwidth. So the build out of fiber networks in order to create these networks in each market also is capital intensive. So to the question, it's a capital intensive process. To the point, whether it's India, the US, or China, there's a path a guide path to bringing forward these next generation networks in order to meet the demand of content consumption and the applications that ride over the network.
Great.
I'd just like to add here that when we talk of transformation in networks, it's mainly two aspects. One is convenience and second is cost. So what we are seeing in our country also, while cloud adoption has picked up, people want flexibility to shift loads from one cloud to the other cloud. They want multiple clouds on a single port. So things like cloud exchange is really picking up, is giving up all the flexibility that a customer needs so that on one pipe he can get multiple clouds and keep shifting. It reduces their cost. It brings in more reliability to their network. And we are seeing those trends coming up, and really that's helping promote cloud adoption. At the same time, it's bringing down the costs just because there's solutions like cloud exchanges available over there.
Any other questions from the audience? Wave your hand wildly, because it's hard to see. Is that, are you waving your hand or stretching? Okay.
Hi. So when it comes to digital device, do you think what can industry, companies and partners can do to have to bridge the digital device? So, and also like beside, the policymakers and the potential for, like helping people who are living at the bottom of the pyramid, do you see, can you see any commercializing opportunities, especially nowadays, like 4 billion of people are not actually so connected? Can they be a lucrative market? Like think about the M-Pesa in Africa, for example. I think they did a fantastic job in connecting people, but at the same time generating money for their own company.
So the basic question is, what do we do about the unconnected or that are on the wrong side of the digital divide, and are there revenue growth opportunities to kind of do well by doing good?
So I got a chance to listen to the social responsibility panel yesterday morning, which I thought they did an excellent job of kind of tackling some of these issues from beyond the digital divide to a number of different areas, which was a great discussion. But I do think that from a timing perspective, we're seeing that it is more companies stepping up, whether it's private equity firms or actual Fortune 500s like Verizon, Microsoft, the like, to really address social issues in a real way, because it's not only the right thing to do, but it's actually good business. So as it pertains to the digital divide, it's really about the build out a network, providing resources and infrastructure, and it's a process, but it starts with a culture and a commitment to do so, and then make those things happen. But I think that from an exciting perspective is you're seeing more and more corporations, to your point around the policy, is kind of lagging some of the corporations that are taking steps in order to eradicate some of the issues that we see from a social perspective.
Did you want to?
Sure, and I think it's also important that we not even think about the digital divide purely in a technological sense, that there's a skill set divides, et cetera, and that I think if we look back historically, I think the folks who were concerned about the magnitude of the digital divide a decade or two back, I would actually say, wow, there was incredible progress made, probably faster than was expected in many ways in terms of getting people connected. And it's only these sort of second level digital divide issues that we've more recently begun to be aware of. And I think those are more, education and public policy questions to make sure that having the device in hand, doesn't exacerbate divisions that existed, in certain ways. That it can, between, there can be people who all have the same technology at their disposal, but the ways they can make use of it to help themselves and to participate in the democratic process, et cetera, can actually still be quite disparate if they're not brought on board with, necessary training, education, et cetera.
So. To close off, I'm going to talk about big picture trends, and I'm pretty impressed with myself because I have 40 to 50 connected devices in my home, and that's Nest Cams and Alexas, and plus the usual smart TVs and so forth. Lance Crosby was up here yesterday. He's building a new house that has 1,000 connected devices, so my impressiveness with myself ended kind of right at that point as far as my adoption of smart home technology. But the basic point is that we're entering an era clearly of many connected devices, whether it's 5G or alternative technology like, low power types of connectivity, Wi-Fi 6 and so forth. So whether it's 5G or not, there's certainly lots of devices that are going to be connected. We've got what I've called the hybrid multi-cloud fog, which is the hybrid of private and public for reasons around cost optimization, legacy migration, hybrids of multiple public clouds, whether it's for end-to-end SaaS workflow enablement or for real-time cloud markets as they sort of are arising, and sort of the hybrid of the high-end cloud centralized consolidated facilities and then highly dispersed things and user devices. And so all that is driving immense change, whether we like it or not, and regardless of what ultimately the end connectivity approach is, whether it's 4G, 5G, or what have you. So the big question is going to be, that's got to change everything, right, as we move away from pure user-centered communications to a mix of users and IoT, VR, AR, brain-computer interfaces, intelligent contact lens displays. What does that all mean for each of you as we think about those mega trends going forward? What are the next, and we're not going to talk about the next 10 to 15 years with quantum communications based on quantum entanglement, but what does it mean in terms of the, not this year, but maybe the next 5 years? What do you each see?
Wow, that's a big question.
Well, you got to end the future of networking with a big question.
There's a lot in it. Look, there's a couple of things we haven't touched on that's actually related to this, and that's the volume of data that actually gets consumed, and how that's all connected together. And you're right, hybrid cloud and connecting legacy and private infrastructure to using public infrastructure is really important. And when you use all those other forms of communication, the big thing that stands out is security. Right, and I think there's a lot more to be done in that space.
Or lack thereof.
Or as in making it better and actually making it easier for and trusting that, and both from a regulatory point of view, both from a privacy point of view. I think there's a lot in that, but I do see actually an acceleration of what we are seeing over the last 2 or 3 years. I see that doubling and tripling and quadrupling going forward of each year as we go through for the next while.
So we don't have time to debate this, but it just seems like for the last 15 years that I've been doing this kind of stuff, security is always the issue, right? And it's always, well, I think we're, sort of turning the corner and, we're starting to get the right policy. But I predict 15 years from now, we'll be in this ballroom, we're still going to be talking about security. Phil, what do you see? 30 seconds on the major trends.
I mean, in the scenario you described, all I kept thinking about was all these different places where automated decision-making processes are at work, and that that's something we're obviously grappling with now. And I think we can't even begin to fathom the magnitude at which that's going to diffuse and how little we have in place to sort of assure that all operates in ways that we find acceptable from an ethical standpoint, from a privacy standpoint. I mean, the list can go on and on.
So you're both clearly right? Security is an ongoing challenge, and privacy and human policy issues are also. Manoj.
Well, we are going to see a lot more connected devices coming up, and however, what the biggest change that is going to happen is the consumption pattern is going to change. A lot more people are going to use more of video. So it's not about how much bandwidth you provide to end user, whether it's 100 meg or 200 meg, it's about can you provide 10 meg to multiple people at the same time inside a football stadium or somewhere else. In India recently, we have 25 million subscribers simultaneously watching one cricket match. That's the maximum that has ever happened on a Hotstar platform watching India's semi-final match in the World Cup. So how do you handle that? It has one network issue, and second is the CDN issue. We are the edge pop of India, one of say, because we have all the content and the CDN players. I mean, the demand that is going to put forward to these CDN players and even the content providers when the network ability improves, because today many of the users are watching cricket match at a 670 kilobits. Tomorrow when they upgrade to 5 and they start demanding HD, is not only that the devices have to improve, but the CDN players have to stream so much more traffic and build their...
So scalability and traffic are the challenge. Dewan, you've got the last minus 17 seconds or so.
Nice. Well, I was just hoping that Lance is a Verizon customer if he has 1,000 connected devices. So. With that, I think I would echo everybody's sentiment. You start with digital transformation. continued trends on OTTs, over-the-top players, as well as connected devices, bringing artificial intelligence, virtual reality, and all of the kind of the catchphrase trends to fruition so that the hype cycle meets the actual fruition of that.
There you have it. That is the future of networking. Thank you. My guest, please join.